and welcome back to another episode of Bookies TV. I'm Erica O'Rourke, one of the Reader's Advisors here at Cook Library, and I'm joined by Mark Morton, one of our librarians who's an expert in horror and teen literature. This month, we're talking all about summer escapes. So whether you're staying home or traveling, you can travel with a book to an island off the coast of Maine, 1960s Pakistan, or even outer space. We can't wait to share these titles with you. And Mark, I'm going to let you go first.
Sure. So my first selection is the prequel to the ever popular TikTok sensation, We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I may bring up a couple minor We Were Liars spoilers, so fair warning if you haven't already read it. Family of Liars is a historical fiction YA thriller that takes place on Beechwood Island, a vacation property near Martha's Vineyard, owned by the wealthy Sinclair family. The book begins with a present-day framing narrative as Carrie is visited by the ghost of her son Johnny, who asks her to tell him some stories from her childhood, specifically the worst thing she has ever done. Carrie, grateful for some time with her son, obliges and recounts the summer of 1987, the year after her sister Rosemary drowned. Carrie was expecting an awkward summer with her sisters and cousins, hiding her new addiction to painkillers, while everyone attempts life as normal in Rosemary's absence. This gets upended when Carrie's cousin, Yardley, brings her boyfriend and two other boys to the island for vacation. What ensues is the summer of Carrie's first kiss, the first time she sees a ghost, and the secret of the worst thing she has ever done. Lockhart is fantastic at developing her characters, so you truly care about each one of them as you learn their dreams, fears, and secrets. This makes the twists and turns she puts them through even more meaningful and tragic to the reader. Also, the elements of magical realism continue to be intriguing in this series, as readers wonder if the characters are really seeing ghosts or if they're simply mentally ill. The great thing about this book is that it still stands well on its own, so you absolutely can start with this one and move on to We Were Liars if you so choose. In fact, I'm a little sad that I can't reread We Were Liars for the first time with this greater understanding of the Sinclair's dark history. This novel is an addictive summer read full of family secrets that'll keep you guessing. It's a must read if you liked the first book or if you're a fan of authors like Karen McManus.
That sounds amazing. I remember reading We Were Liars when it first came out. And it was one of the first books where the shocking twist ending really felt shocking and twisty. I was absolutely gobsmacked. Do you feel like this has sort of a similar vibe to it?
So it's hard to recreate that exact feeling of, whoa, what just happened? Did I just read that? And I feel like Lockhart had kind of a tall task to do so. So it doesn't have the exact feel, but there's definitely a twist and a shock at the end. And it does pay off. And I think it's worth it to read it.
It's probably hard to put a shocking twist in when that's what you're known for. Like, people are expecting it. So that's no mean feat.
Exactly.
Well, I'm excited to read it. And I hope for her sake that it goes as viral on TikTok as the first one, because people, I think it's been at least 10 years since the first one came out, and people are just discovering it now, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely had staying power, and the teens still love to read it.
With good reason. So my next title is also historical. It's set in 1960s Pakistan. There's a little bit of time jumping as well. It's The Return of Faraz Ali by Amina Ahmad. And it is technically a mystery, but it has much more of a literary bent to it than I would say most mysteries do. It's got a very noir feel. It's about a police inspector in 1960s Pakistan, and he's ordered to cover up the murder of a child prostitute in Lahore's red light district. It's a neighborhood called the Mahalla. And he's ordered to do this by his own father, who, as it turns out, took him from the Mahalla when he was just a child. Now he's sent back to cover up this crime. It's a real struggle of conscience for him throughout the book. He wants to do what's right. He wants to protect his family in this very corrupt environment. And also he wants answers about his past. At the same time, his sister, who also managed to get out of the Mahalla and become a film star in the Pakistani film industry, she's working to help her own daughter get out of the Mahalla and sort of find a better future for herself. At its heart, it really feels like a story about parents and children and the ways that we protect children, even if they might not be the right way or a way that a child would appreciate. It's also, it's just got such compelling, well-drawn characters. Every single character in this book, even the bad guys, are just so well drawn, and there's so much nuance to them. They're actually very relatable. And the details of the world, both of Pakistan in the 1960s and during the partition, which took place in the 1940s, are so well drawn, and it's transporting. The pages fly by, and it asks some really big, interesting questions. I think it's a great fit for book clubs or anybody who wants to learn more about Pakistan's history. And I think if you like literary fiction that's got both a really compelling personal story and a strong sense of place, this is a great fit. And if you like literary mysteries, maybe Miracle Creek by Angie Kim, I think this is a fantastic read alike.
I've been finding noirs kind of intriguing recently. And I've read noirs that take place in the States, obviously, and then ones that have taken place in Mexico. How was it different to read one that took place in Pakistan? Well, how was the setting different for that genre or unique?
So I think it's because the power structure works differently than it does here. I think we're very familiar with that setup of like, there's the detective, the private detective doing battle against the corrupt police, or the naive police officer fighting this corrupt system. And there is an element of that, but I think because Pakistan works so differently in terms of its government and its history, that really, you sort of saw it with fresh eyes. I also think, I mean, noir is a lot about the corruption and sort of how nobody's a good person. They're just trying to make the best choices they can. And in this case, Faraz is a good person. He's a good person, and he is doing the best he can. I'm not sure he ever gets quite as beaten down by the system as I would have expected in a noir. And I also think that giving his sister such a strong storyline is also something that's missing from noir novels, whether you just don't see that many female lead characters. And I would say that her story has equal weight to Faraz. Even though he gets the title, he gets like top billing, I think her story and the way it both intertwines with his and separates is really unusual for noir.
Nice. So do we want to move on to my next one?
Yes, please.
Awesome. My next selection is a sci-fi young adult novel entitled Alone Out Here by Riley Redgate. The story is set in 2072. Global warming has taken its toll on our planet, and everyone is preparing for the end of the world, arriving in the form of an extinction-level volcano blast. Political leaders and scientists have been preparing for this through the Earth's Global Fleet Planning Commission, charged with creating a new generation of starships to evacuate a lucky few of each country's citizens and ensure humanity's survival. But as politicians argue over priority on the ships, Li Chen, the daughter of the president, joins the children of leaders from all over the world to tour a prototype of one of the starships called the Lazarus. Unfortunately, the apocalypse comes earlier than anticipated, and the kids have to board the ship to escape. Without adults, without a plan, and only the daughter of a crew member to act as pilot and de facto leader. As Lee and the other teens take on leadership roles in the group, they realize that they have the power to form a new society, unburdened by the mistakes of their parents on Earth. But when the chance to rescue an adult astronaut brings division among the teens, are they doomed to repeat the sins of the past? Redgate does a great job of building tension and dread as the situation gets worse for the teens on the ship, resulting in violence and unfortunately death. Characters wrestle with themes of trauma and loss, and they also ponder ethics of community. Readers will learn along with Lee, who's the main character, that each of her decisions and inactions have consequences for the group on a whole. And the nightmare scenario is kind of reminiscent of Lord of the Flies in space, with a little bit of romance thrown in too, because you need that in young adult, right? I really enjoyed reading it. Despite getting a starred review, I feel like this title has really flown under the radar and it deserves a lot more attention. The novel stands alone, which is also really rare and refreshing for a young adult market that seems to always like to stretch ideas into several books. And so it's a great choice for readers who like sci-fi dystopias or enjoy titles like The 100 by Cass Morgan.
That sounds amazing. I do hate it when the apocalypse comes earlier than scheduled. That's so inconvenient. It sounds like it meshes both that sort of thriller high stakes action with some big ideas, which is really nice.
Yeah, it does for sure. And sometimes with YA, you get the excuse for the action, but this one definitely kind of ponders the deeper meanings, like what it's like to lose everyone you love, or if we make this selfish decision, how does it affect the other kids on the ship? Which was nice to see in a young adult book.
Yeah, it puts me a little bit in mind of Across the Universe by Beth Revis. I don't know if you read that one.
No.
It's a generation ship story where, Earth is uninhabitable and they're on a ship that is going to go for, like 100 years. So multiple generations will live and die on the ship before they finally get to a new inhabitable planet.
Yeah, and
that's
kind of the thought. That's kind of the thought behind this one too. And unfortunately, since this was just a prototype ship, they weren't prepared. So they're like slowly come to find out that they don't have as many supplies as they need, and they're not equipped for everything that they should have been if the plan could have been completed. Yeah. And if the adults could have been on board.
Which is an excellent way to ratchet up those stakes.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, my second title is also an adventure. It is much more earthbound. It takes place in the Canyonlands National Park in Utah. It's one of the bigger books of the summer. It's which I tend not to read. I figure everybody's already reading the big books of the summer. They don't need me to weigh in. But I felt like this was such a departure for the authors. It's worth bringing a little more attention to. The title is Something Wilder by Christina Lauren, which is a team of women writing together, 2 women. It is a steamy and surprisingly emotional second chance romance. They're known for their second chance romances. They've done them more than once. That couple is together initially, something drives them apart, they reunite, and is it worth it? Can they make it work the second time around? Obviously, as I always say, it's a romance, so the odds that they're going to make it work are pretty good. But this one is delightful. It is very much in the vein of Romancing the Stone, which was a great movie. They also had a book. You might not know that. There was a book of Romancing the Stone, which seemed fitting. This book, though, is about Lily Wilder. She's the daughter of a famed archaeologist / treasure hunter who specializes in the Wild West. And her dad is not the most conventional of dads, and not the most, generous spirited. So in the span of like 24 hours, he causes her to lose the love of her life, who heads back to New York and never to be seen again. And he sells the family ranch out from under her. The one thing that she loves more than this boy that just went to New York is the family ranch. And in 24 hours, he manages to take both of them away from her. The action then picks up, and you see that in the first chapter. I'm not spoiling anything. 10 years later, the action picks up. Lily has managed to pick up the pieces and kind of cobble together a life by leading tourists on treasure hunts through the Canyonland National Park. They're faux treasure hunts, obviously. She's, stashed little fake treasures all around the park. And who should appear but the boy that she lost 10 years ago? He doesn't realize it's her treasure company. Or her tour company. He had no idea. And so he is suddenly there with a group of his friends, and she's going to lead them on this tour. And then very quickly, things go off the rails in spectacularly dangerous fashion. And the two of them find themselves on a real treasure hunt with real danger. And they have to not just work together, but they really have to trust each other in order to A, survive, and B, make their relationship work. What I loved about it, there were two things that I thought were really spectacular. I guess three. One, the dialogue's fantastic. It's very snappy. That's what they're known for. And I expected that going into this book. Lots of really witty banter. What I was more surprised by, though, was in a lot of romances that I don't love, there's this miscommunication. And you see this a lot with Hallmark movies. Like, if these two could just sit down and have a conversation, everything would be fixed and they'd get their happy ending. In this case, they have that conversation very early on. Like, they are well aware of why the miscommunication happened. They're not holding grudges. But the fact of the matter is, their conflict is so deeply rooted in who they are and what they want out of life. That's what's going to make their relationship really hard to overcome, but also make it really rewarding. And I thought they did just a brilliant job with that. The other thing that I did not anticipate was how gorgeous the scenery was, and the park and sort of their love of this area. The research that they put into it was very evident and just beautifully written. I'm not a nature lover. Bugs don't like me, and I don't like bugs, and I feel the same way about heat. This was nearly enough to make me want to go visit the park. I'm not saying I'm like going to book a plane ticket right now, but if someone offered me the chance to go and explore this park, they made it sound gorgeous enough that I would seriously consider stocking up on my sunscreen. So I think, it's a pretty steamy book, not the medium steam, I guess, if you're looking at a scale in terms of how explicit the content is. But I think for a summer romance, if you're looking for something fun and fast-paced and well-written but breezy, this is the way to go.
Now, Erica, I'm going to say something that might surprise you.
I'm going to be shocked, I know.
I don't read a lot of adult romance.
What? No.
No. For my job, I do have to read a lot of young adult romance, or an okay amount of it. So I guess my question for you is, since it sounds like it is a lot like Romancing the Stone, and kind of like a little bit of an Indiana Jones vibe, maybe.
A little bit of National Treasure, a little bit of Indiana Jones.
Yeah. And sometimes like those older adventure stories can be a little problematic gender role wise, looking at them from a 2022 lens. Mm-hmm. Did you encounter any of that with this book, or did it do a decent job of staying up with the times? It
did a fantastic job. I was super impressed with, all through this story, obviously, the relationship between Lily and Leo, who is the boy that she lost all those years ago. Obviously, their romance is the center storyline, but there's also the storyline of Lily and her best friend. There's another woman who helps her run the tour company. And their friendship is so well drawn. And there is never a sense that Lily's life is incomplete because she doesn't have Leo, because she doesn't have a man. Like, that is not a lack in her life. She doesn't feel like there's something missing. Her goal is not to be with a guy. Her goal is to have agency over her own future by, winning back the family ranch. That's really what drives her. The relationship with Leo tracks along with that, but is not, you never believe that Lily would give up what she dreams of to be with Leo. And you never think that Leo would ask her to, which is really nice. So yeah, I feel like they kind of happily updated that aspect of the 80s and 90s adventure movies.
Good. That makes me happy to hear. And you've almost convinced me to read it. I might pick that one up.
That is going to be my personal challenge. I think we're doing this again in October, Mark. And by then, I'm going to find you a romance. I'm going to do it. Challenge accepted.
I look forward to that challenge, and maybe
Excellent.
I'll find you a horror to read.
We'll see. We'll see. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. All right. And I think that's it for us today. So thank you all so much for joining us. And if you'd like to hear more about the books that we're reading and loving, we would invite you to come see us at the Libertyville Farmers Market in Cook Park on Thursday mornings. We're just next to the steps of the cookhouse. And you can find us anytime at www.cooklib.org/bookies. Swing by there. You can get recommendations for great reads, whether you like romance or horror or anything in between. We've got suggestions for you. So thanks for stopping by and enjoy the rest of your summer.